Was there a historical Moses? Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and there's just not a good case to make for the existence of a historical Moses, and certainly not anything like what we find in the book of Exodus. The data best support the conclusion that the book of Exodus is primarily a post-exilic work that is bringing together some local traditions that probably pre-exist the exile but don't go back any further than maybe the 7th or 8th centuries BCE, and is also tying it together with other foreign traditions such as the birth narrative of Sargon of Akkad and perhaps the expulsion of the Hyksos from Egypt in the middle of the 16th century BCE. But there's not a good case to make for situating the events of the book of Exodus in ancient Egypt or ancient Canaan between the 15th and the 13th centuries BCE. Politically, economically, agriculturally, demographically, it's just not a comfortable fit. And we have references to peoples like the Edomites, the Moabites, the Philistines, who at the very earliest maybe existed as loose people groups in the late 13th century BCE, but the Philistines wouldn't exist at all until they arrived in the area in the mid to late 12th century BCE. But all three of these groups were really flourishing and were really the biggest concern for Judahites and Israelites in like the 8th century BCE. And additionally, we don't have historical narrative prose in alphabetic scripts like Hebrew until the late 9th century BCE, and virtually all of the book of Exodus is written in historical narrative prose. So the text cannot have been written down any earlier than the late 9th century BCE, and it shows no signs of having been translated from some other earlier language. So the text, at best, reflects a late 9th century BCE orientation, but it most likely is just adopting traditions from maybe the 8th or 7th centuries BCE at the earliest and working them into a narrative that is incorporating these other traditions in order to give meaning to and inform the experiences of Judahites returning from exile to a land that they didn't really know. That's the most likely conclusion to draw from the data, and there's not a good way to account for a historical Moses in light of all of those data. It's coming from far too many centuries after the fact, and the details of Moses' life are best accounted for as a literary creation. And the fit for this video has been DuckTales. A woohoo!